Multiple schedules, mixed schedules, and chain schedules are easy to confuse because all three involve more than one component. Before we practice, get the sorting rule clear with definitions and concrete examples. First, ask whether the components are signaled. Then ask whether the learner must move through a required sequence. Then ask whether completing earlier components leads toward a terminal reinforcer. After this lesson, use the free BCBA mock exam and the quick study guide at bcbmockexam.com to keep practicing with mixed wording. Start with the definitions. A multiple schedule has two or more component schedules, and each component is correlated with its own stimulus. A mixed schedule also has two or more component schedules, but the learner does not get clear correlated stimuli that signal which component is in effect. A chain schedule is different because the components occur in a required order, and completing one component produces the stimulus for the next component until terminal reinforcement is reached. So do not classify by counting schedules. Classify by signals and sequence. Now, I'll make the definitions concrete. For a multiple schedule, imagine a green card that means FR5 and a blue card that means 6-1 minute. The card color tells the learner which component is active, and the teacher may switch from one card to the other. The learner does not have to complete green in order to produce blue. For a mixed schedule, imagine those same FR5 and 6-1 minute components, but nothing changes when the active component changes. The learner contacts different components, but there is no clear correlated signal. For a chain schedule, imagine the learner sees step 1, completes step 1, and then step 2 appears. Completing each component produces the next stimulus, and the terminal reinforcer comes only after the final component. Those three examples are the anchor for the rest of the video. Here is the clean comparison. In a multiple schedule, components alternate and each component is signaled. In a mixed schedule, components alternate, but there are no clear component signals. In a chain schedule, the components are not just alternating. They must be completed in order, and completing one component produces the next stimulus. That response-produced sequence is the feature many exam questions test. Use this decision order on every item. First, ask whether different components are correlated with different stimuli. If yes, multiple schedule becomes possible. If no, mixed schedule becomes possible. Second, ask whether the components simply alternate or whether one must be completed before the next begins. Third, ask whether completion of earlier components produces the next stimulus, with terminal reinforcement only after the final component. That required ordered sequence points to a chain schedule. A token, a step label, or a worksheet does not automatically decide the answer. Tokens can appear in reinforcement systems, response cost, and other arrangements. A list of tasks is not a chain schedule unless completing one component produces the next stimulus and moves the learner toward terminal reinforcement. And if the schedule changes, but nothing signals which component is active, mixed schedule may be stronger than multiple. The exam is testing the controlling relation, not the object in the example. Before the practice set, use a one-sentence routine. Name the signal, name the sequence, and name the outcome. If there are distinct component cues, but no required order, think multiple schedule. If there are no component cues, think mixed schedule. If each completed component produces the next stimulus and the terminal reinforcer comes only after the final component, think chain schedule. Now practice 20 exam-style scenarios. For each question, pause before the reveal and say the controlling clue out loud. The goal is not to memorize these examples. The goal is to build a schedule sorting move you can use when the wording changes. Question 1. Read this one for the signal first. A BCBA asks a trainee to classify an arrangement by asking whether component schedules are signaled and whether responding must move through a required sequence. Which rule is most useful? The choices are A. Multiple equals signaled components. Mixed equals unsignaled components. Chained equals ordered components leading to terminal reinforcement. B. Multiple equals no signals. Mixed equals signals. Chained equals simultaneous choices. C. Multiple, mixed, and chained all require the same response requirement. D. Chain schedules are defined only by using tokens. Pause now and choose the best answer. The correct answer is A, the signal and sequence rule. Here is why it fits this stem. The key distinction is whether components have correlated stimuli and whether completion of one component produces the next stimulus until terminal reinforcement. Now, check the distractors. For B, this reverses multiple and mixed. Multiple requires signals, while mixed lacks correlated component signals. For C, the stem asks for a sorting rule, and the three schedules do not all require the same response relation. For D, tokens are not the defining feature of a chain. Response-produced component stimuli and terminal reinforcement are. The correct label comes from the controlling relation, not from a keyword. Trap check. Do not classify only by counting schedules. Multiple and mixed both involve more than one component. Question 2. Do not answer from a number of schedules alone. A learner works under FR5 when the card is green and 6-1 minute when the card is blue. The card color changes across the session, and each color signals the active schedule. Which schedule is illustrated? The choices are A, mixed schedule, B, multiple schedule, C, chain schedule, D, tandem schedule. Pause now and choose the best answer. The correct answer is B, multiple schedule. Here is why it fits this stem. The components are successively available, and each component has a correlated stimulus, the green or blue card. Now, check the distractors. For A, that choice would require no clear correlated stimuli. The green and blue cards are exactly the signals. For C, that choice would require completing one component to produce the next stimulus. The stem only says colors change across the session. For D, that choice would require an ordered sequence without component stimuli. This item has clear component stimuli. Notice that the answer uses only the evidence given in the stem. Trap check. Different basic schedules alone do not make a chain. Nothing says one component must be completed to produce the next. Question 3. Slow down and locate the transition cue. A learner works under FR3 and 6-2 minute components during the same session, but no color cue, timer, or other stimulus tells the learner which component is active. What schedule arrangement is in effect? The choices are A, multiple schedule, B, mixed schedule, C, chain schedule, D, concurrent schedule. Pause now and choose the best answer. The correct answer is B, mixed schedule. Here is why it fits this stem. The components alternate, but there are no correlated stimuli that identify which component is currently active. Now, check the distractors. For A, the stem explicitly says there is no color cue, timer, or other signal. For C, the stem gives no required order and no completion-produced next stimulus. For D, the components are not available at the same time as alternatives. This is the discrimination you want to build before mixed practice. Trap check. Do not pick multiple just because there are two component schedules. Multiple requires component signals. Question 4. This item is testing whether you can separate signal from sequence. A learner sees a red card, completes FR4 responses, then a yellow card appears. Under yellow, after the 6:30s interval has elapsed, and a learner makes the reinforced response, a green card appears. Only after the green component is completed does food occur. Which schedule is best? The choices are A, multiple schedule, B, mixed schedule, C, chain schedule, D, concurrent schedule. Pause now and choose the best answer. The correct answer is C, chain schedule. Here is why it fits this stem. Each completed component produces the stimulus for the next component, and terminal reinforcement occurs only after the final component. Now, check the distractors. For A, that choice is tempting because red, yellow, and green are signals, but the response-produced order makes it a chain. For B, the components are clearly signaled by different colored cards. For D, the components are not simultaneously available choices. The tempting answer fails because it skips one part of the schedule relation. Trap check. Signals are present, but the required response-produced order makes this a chain rather than a simple multiple schedule. Question 5. Before looking for a familiar label, name what changes from one component to the next. A learner must complete FR10 and then wait through 1 minute before reinforcement, but there are no distinct stimuli marking the two components. Which answer best separates this from a chain schedule? The choices are A. It is tandem because the order is required but component stimuli are absent. B. It is multiple because two schedules are involved. C. It is mixed because any two components without signals are mixed. D. It is concurrent because two schedules exist. Pause now and choose the best answer. The correct answer is A. Tandem schedule. Here is why it fits this stem. A tandem schedule has a required sequence like a chain, but it lacks the correlated stimuli for the individual components. Now, check the distractors. For B, there are no distinct stimuli marking the components. For C, the stem includes a required FR then 6 order, not just unsignaled alternation. For D, the learner is not choosing between simultaneously available schedules. Say the reason in one sentence before moving on. Trap check. Mixed schedules have unsignaled components, but they do not require completion of one component before the next. Question 6. Read this one for the signal first. A therapist says a learner is on a chain schedule because the learner completes 2 worksheet pages in order, but each page completion is independently reinforced and does not produce the next task stimulus. Which critique is strongest? The choices are A. It is definitely mixed because worksheets are used. B. The chain label is weak because each component is independently reinforced rather than leading to one terminal reinforcer. C. It is definitely negative reinforcement. D. It must be respondent conditioning. Pause now and choose the best answer. The correct answer is B. The chain label is weak. Here is why it fits this stem. A chain schedule requires a sequence in which completion of one component produces the next stimulus, with terminal reinforcement after the final component. Now, check the distractors. For A, that label is not supported just because worksheets are used. The issue is independent reinforcement and no produced next stimulus. For C, negative reinforcement is not described because nothing is removed following responding in the stem. For D, respondent conditioning is unrelated because the item is about operant schedule relations. The correct label comes from the controlling relation, not from a keyword. Trap check. A sequence of activities is not automatically a chain schedule if each activity is separately reinforced. Question 7. Do not answer from a number of schedules alone. When a tone is on, lever presses are reinforced on FI30S. When a light is on, lever presses are reinforced on FR10. Tone and light alternate and signal which schedule is active. Which schedule is described? The choices are A. Mixed schedule. B. Multiple schedule. C. Chain schedule. D. Tandem schedule. Pause now and choose the best answer. The correct answer is B. Multiple schedule. Here is why it fits this stem. Different stimuli signal different component schedules that are available successively. Now, check the distractors. For A, tone and light clearly signal which component is active. For C, lever pressing under one stimulus does not produce the next stimulus in an ordered chain. For D, tandem schedules lack distinct component stimuli, and this stem has tone and light cues. Notice that the answer uses only the evidence given in the stem. Trap check. The same response can appear across multiple components. That does not make it mixed or chained. Question 8. Slow down and locate the transition cue. Across a session, reinforcement alternates between FR8 and FI 1-minute components. The learner receives no stimulus change when the component changes. Which schedule is most precise? The choices are A. Mixed schedule. B. Multiple schedule. C. Chain schedule. D. Concurrent schedule. Pause now and choose the best answer. The correct answer is A. Mixed schedule. Here is why it fits this stem. The components are presented successively without correlated stimuli, signaling the active component. Now, check the distractors. For B, the learner receives no stimulus change when components change. For C, there is no required response produced order through components. For D, The components are not described as simultaneously available. This is the discrimination you want to build before mixed practice. Trap check. The examiner may mention multiple basic schedules, but multiple schedule as a technical term requires signals. Question 9. This item is testing whether you can separate signal from sequence. A worksheet is always on the desk. Sometimes tokens are delivered after every third correct response, and sometimes after the first response following 2 minutes. The worksheet looks the same in both components. Which answer is best? The choices are A. Multiple schedule because 2 schedules are used. B. Mixed schedule because the components are not differentially signaled. C. Chain schedule because both components involve work. D. DRI because correct responses are incompatible with errors. Pause now and choose the best answer. The correct answer is B. Mixed schedule. Here is why it fits this stem. The same worksheet does not signal which component is active, so the changing components are unsignaled. Now, check the distractors. For A, 2 schedules alone are not enough. The worksheet looks the same in both components. For C, work appears in both components, but the stem does not say completing one produces the next component stimulus. For D, DRI is unrelated here because the stem is not about reinforcing an incompatible alternative response. The tempting answer fails because it skips one part of the schedule relation. Trap check. A stimulus in the room is not automatically a correlated stimulus for the active component. Question 10. Before looking for a familiar label, name what changes from one component to the next. In a cooking routine, the learner sees a picture for step 1. Completing step 1 produces the picture for step 2. Completing step 2 produces the picture for step 3. The meal is available only after step 3. What schedule relation is illustrated? The choices are A. Multiple schedule. B. Mixed schedule. C. Chain schedule. D. Concurrent schedule. Pause now and choose the best answer. The correct answer is C. Chain schedule. Here is why it fits this stem. Each completed component produces the stimulus for the next component, and the terminal reinforcer follows the final component. Now, check the distractors. For A, the next picture is produced by completing the previous step, not simply alternated by time. For B, the steps are signaled by pictures. For D, the learner is not choosing among simultaneous schedules. Say the reason in one sentence before moving on. Trap check. This is not just task analysis language. The response-produced stimulus sequence is the schedule clue. Question 11. Read this one for the signal first. A learner can press a left key for FR5 reinforcement or a right key for 630S reinforcement at any time during the same period. Which schedule arrangement is most likely? The choices are A. Concurrent schedule. B. Multiple schedule. C. Mixed schedule. D. Chain schedule. Pause now and choose the best answer. The correct answer is A. Concurrent schedule. Here is why it fits this stem. The 2 schedules are available at the same time rather than successively presented as components. Now check the distractors. For B, the left and right schedules are available at the same time, not successive components. For C, for the same timing reason, this is not unsignaled alternation across time. For D, completing one key schedule does not produce the next component stimulus. The correct label comes from the controlling relation, not from a keyword. Trap check. Multiple and mixed schedules involve successive components, not simultaneous alternatives. Question 12. Do not answer from the number of schedules alone. A child has work time signaled by a desk card and playtime signaled by a floor card. Each component has its own reinforcement schedule, and components alternate by the teacher's timer, not by completing one component. What is this? The choices are A. Multiple schedule. B. Mixed schedule. C. Chain schedule. D. Tandem schedule. Pause now and choose the best answer. The correct answer is A. Multiple schedule. Here is why it fits this stem. The components are differentially signaled, and there is no required response-produced sequence. Now, check the distractors. For B, desk card and floor card signal the components. For C, The teacher's timer controls alternation, not completion of one component producing the next. For D, tandem has a required order without component stimuli. This stem has signal components. Notice that the answer uses only the evidence given in the stem. Trap check. Do not call a chain just because the session moves from one activity to another. Question 13. Slow down and locate the transition cue. During a session, a learner contacts several different schedules in an unpredictable order. There are no correlated stimuli, and completing one component does not produce the next. Which label is best? The choices are A, chain schedule, B, multiple schedule, C, mixed schedule, D, tandem schedule. Pause now and choose the best answer. The correct answer is C, mixed schedule. Here is why it fits this stem. The arrangement includes changing components without clear correlated stimuli and without a required sequence. Now, check the distractors. For A, the stem explicitly says completing one component does not produce the next. For B, there are no correlated stimuli for the active component. For D, there is no required ordered sequence. This is the discrimination you want to build before mixed practice. Trap check. No signal alone does not mean tandem. Tandem requires an ordered sequence. Question 14. This item is testing whether you can separate signal from sequence. A student completes spelling, then math, then reading. After each subject, the student earns a separate token. The next subject begins when the teacher says so, not because the previous completion produces the next cue. Which statement is most defensible? The choices are A, this is definitely a chain schedule. B, this is not enough for a chain schedule because the components are separately reinforced and teacher-controlled. C, this must be a mixed schedule because tokens are involved. D, this is responding conditioning. Pause now and choose the best answer. The correct answer is B, not enough for chain schedule. Here is why it fits this stem. The stem lacks response-produced transitions and terminal reinforcement after the final component. Now, check the distractors. For A, the chain label fails because each subject earns a separate token and the teacher starts the next subject. For C, that label is not established by tokens. Mix would require unsignaled schedule components. For D, responding conditioning is outside this operant schedule classification. The tempting answer fails because it skips one part of the schedule relation. Trap check. School routines often look sequential, but a chain requires a specific schedule relation. Question 15. Before looking for a familiar label, name what changes from one component to the next. For hand washing, the learner turns on the water and wets hands. Wet hands then cue getting soap, soap cues scrubbing, and so on. Praise occurs only after the whole routine is completed. What schedule arrangement is illustrated? The choices are A, mixed schedule, B, multiple schedule, C, chain schedule, D, concurrent schedule. Pause now and choose the best answer. The correct answer is C, chain schedule. Here is why it fits this stem. Each completed step produces the stimulus for the next step, and the terminal reinforcer follows completion of the whole sequence. Now, check the distractors. For A, the hand-washing steps are not unsignaled alternating components. For B, the sequence advances when each step is completed, not just when a signal alternates. For D, the steps are not simultaneously available alternatives. Say the reason in one sentence before moving on. Trap check. The important clue is not that hand-washing has many steps. The clue is that each step sets up the next component. Question 16. Read this one for the signal first. A red sign means math answers are reinforced after 5 correct responses. A blue sign means the first reading response after about 1 minute can be reinforced. The teacher switches signs throughout the session. Which schedule is best? The choices are A, mixed schedule, B, multiple schedule, C, chain schedule, D, tandem schedule. Pause now and choose the best answer. The correct answer is B, multiple schedule. Here is why it fits this stem. The red and blue signs are correlated stimuli for different component schedules. Now, check the distractors. For A, red and blue signs clearly identify the active component. For C, the teacher switches signs. Completing math does not produce reading. For D, there is no required order without stimuli. The correct label comes from the controlling relation, not from a keyword. Trap check. Different activities do not automatically form a chain when the teacher, not component completion, controls the switch. Question 17. Do not answer from a number of schedules alone. A therapist alternates dense and lean reinforcement periods, but there is no cue and no predictable signal for the learner. The learner cannot tell which component is active. Which term fits best? The choices are A, multiple schedule, B, mixed schedule, C, chain schedule, D, concurrent schedule. Pause now and choose the best answer. The correct answer is B, mixed schedule. Here is why it fits this stem. The components are not differentially signaled, so the learner has no correlated stimulus for the active component. Now, check the distractors. For A, the stem says there is no cue or predictable signal. For C, there is no ordered sequence and no completion-produced next stimulus. For D, dense and lean periods alternate rather than being simultaneously available. Notice that the answer uses only the evidence given in the stem. Trap check. Dense and lean reinforcement periods can still be mixed if the components are unsignaled. Question 18. Slow down and locate the transition cue. A learner sees Step 1, completes FR2 responses, then Step 2 appears. After a 6 1-minute component in Step 2, Step 3 appears. Only after Step 3 is completed does the learner earn music. Which is best? The choices are A, multiple schedule, B, mixed schedule, C, chain schedule, D, concurrent schedule. Pause now and choose the best answer. The correct answer is C, chain schedule. Here is why it fits this stem. The components occur in a required order. Each completion produces the next stimulus, and music is the terminal reinforcer. Now, check the distractors. For A, Step 2 and Step 3 are produced by completing earlier components. For B, the components have explicit step stimuli. For D, the learner is moving through an ordered sequence, not choosing simultaneous schedules. This is the discrimination you want to build before mixed practice. Trap check. Do not stop at FR plus 6. Multiple schedules alternate signaled components. Chains require a response-produced sequence. Question 19. This item is testing whether you can separate signal from sequence. In one arrangement, green and yellow cards alternate by a timer. In another, completing the green card requirement produces the yellow card, and final reinforcement follows completion of a yellow component. Which distinction matters most? The choices are A, whether there are two colors, B, whether the learner completes one component to produce the next component stimulus, C, whether the reinforcer is edible, D, whether the response is motor or vocal. Pause now and choose the best answer. The correct answer is B, transition control. Here is why it fits this stem. The chain depends on response-produced transitions through ordered components toward terminal reinforcement. Now, check the distractors. For A, two colors can appear in both arrangements, so color count does not separate multiple from chained. For C, whether the reinforcer is edible does not define the schedule relation. For D, motor versus vocal response form does not determine multiple versus chained. The tempting answer fails because it skips one part of the schedule relation. Trap check. Both arrangements can have distinct stimuli. The difference is whether component completion moves the sequence forward. Question 20. Before looking for a familiar label, name what changes from one component to the next. During center time, a red card signals an FR5 sorting component, and a blue card signals a 6 1-minute reading component. The teacher alternates cards every few minutes. Reinforcement can occur in either component, and completing red does not produce blue. Which is best? The choices are A, mixed schedule, B, multiple schedule, C, chain schedule, D, tandem schedule. Pause now and choose the best answer. The correct answer is B, multiple schedule. Here is why it fits this stem. The components are differentially signaled and alternate successively, but completion of one component does not produce the next component stimulus. Now, check the distractors. For A, red and blue cards signal the active components. For C, completing red does not produce blue and reinforcement can occur in either component. For D, the components are signaled and there is no required sequence. Say the reason in one sentence before moving on. Trap check. Do not call it chained just because there is a sequence in time. A chain requires response-produced transitions toward terminal reinforcement. Final rule. Multiple schedules have signaled components, but no required response-produced sequence. Mixed schedules have components without clear correlated stimuli. Chain schedules have ordered components where completing one component produces the next stimulus, and terminal reinforcement comes after the final component. When you are unsure, explain the transition from one component to the next. To keep practicing, take the free BCBA mock exam and use the free BCBA 6th edition quick study guide at bcbamockexam.com.